Now that we've went over correct tool loading and unloading of the machine, now we're ready to check the alignment on our vise. I'm going to take a tool holder. I'm going to place an indicator inside the tool holder, and then I'm going to use the indicator to measure the relative location of this vise. So as we've done before, I want to make sure that the spindle is oriented. So I'm going to go to MDI mode. I'm going to delete everything that is in MDI mode. You may have to use the arrows, the right and left arrows, to get to all the code that is in there. Again, hit the delete button here in order to delete the code. Now I'm going to type in M19. I'm going to close the doors, and I'm going to hit cycle start. Nothing happened. That means that the spindle was already oriented. If it needed to orient, it would have. Now that the spindle is oriented, now I can place a tool in the spindle. Again, as before, the blank side of the tool holder facing out. Press the button, place the tool holder inside the machine, release the button. Okay. If you'll notice, the drive lug is into the drive ring. So make sure that you see this visual cue on the tool holder before you let it go. If you do not see this visual cue here where the tool is all the way up in the machine, the tool will drop out as soon as you let go of it. Now that the tool is in the machine, I want you to load in the indicator. Okay, the indicator only gets loaded in the machine when you need it. So we're going to put the tool holder in the machine, add the indicator, indicate what we need to, remove the indicator. Okay? These indicators are expensive. We don't want to buy indicators because you dropped a tool holder or because you bumped a tool holder moving it out of the machine. Anything that we're doing as far as precision measurement needs to only happen when we need it. So whether I'm using a micrometer, whether I'm using a measuring device, whether I'm using my indicator, I want to use it, keep it clean, and then set it aside. Don't leave your measuring tools all over the place. We're going to treat those with respect. So now I can go ahead and use my keyless chuck to go ahead and grab onto the shank of that indicator. Make sure that the keyless chuck grabs onto the indicator and make sure that the indicator is straight. Okay? Now if you need to straighten the indicator so that you can see the face of it, go over and press the reset button. And now the spindle is free to move. Okay? Now our next step is going to be to handle jog the machine so that the indicator is touching this rigid jaw. On our machines with these Kurt vices, the rigid jaw is the jaw that's in back. The movable jaw is the jaw that is in front. If you're using a new vise and you're not sure which one's the rigid or movable one, grab the vise handle and merely open and close the vise. Whichever vise jaw moves, that is the movable jaw. We do not indicate the movable jaw. Okay, now I'm ready to go ahead and move the machine. Handle jog. I want to go ahead and move in Z. And I want to go ahead and move in 10,000ths. So you can see the 10,000ths comes up on the screen. The Z is shown here. And also your jog rate is in the upper right hand corner. So if I pick 1 thou, it's shown here. If I pick 1/10 thou, it's shown here. So make sure you're in the correct jog increment. which in this case is 10 thou, make sure you have the correct axis selected. Now Z, again, moves up and down. So if I move counterclockwise, the Z is going to move down. If I move clockwise, the Z is going to move up. Now what I want to do is I want to move cautiously towards the rigid jaw. So I'm going to bring the tool down about an inch above the vise. Then I'm going to press the Y. I'm going to move the indicator. Remember, the table moves, so the table is going to move backwards, but think of the indicator as moving towards the vise jaw. Okay? I'm going to press Z again, and I'm going to put the indicator right inside the vise. Okay? We don't have to put it way down inside. We just have to go to the top of the vise jaw. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get it as close as I feel comfortable. So, as close as I feel comfortable is about 1/8 of an inch. So we want to get the indicator, the tip of the indicator, to within 1/8 of an inch of the vise jaw. I move it to one side, and as you can see here, I'm positioned on the right-hand side of the vise jaw, and I'm about 1/8 of an inch away from the vise. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and hit 1 thou and Y, and I want to move the indicator towards the vise jaw until I see the needle move on the indicator. Okay? That's the first thing I want to do. I want to move very slowly towards the vise jaw. You saw the indicator move slightly. I'm just going to move it a little bit more to get it to where it's lined up with the 0. You can line it up with any number that you want, but again, we only want to move it about, if I was to say like a clock, I want to move it from about 10 o'clock to midnight, or 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. I only want to move it about 2 hours or about 45 degrees. Any more than that is unnecessary. So I'm going to go down to 1/10,000th, and I'm just going to get my needle to line up with one of the numbers. In this case, going from where it was laying before to noon was about 45 degrees, and now I'm lined up with the 0. If I move too much, I can actually damage the indicator or run out of indication on the indicator. Okay? So that's something that we have to be aware of. I can actually overdrive the indicator so that it won't work correctly. In this case, I only moved it about 5/1000ths of an inch, about 45 degrees. And now I can go ahead and hit the X axis, and I can hit the 10,000ths button. Now what I'm doing is I'm checking the relative position of the right side of the vise in relationship to the left side of the vise. So I move counterclockwise, and what I'm looking for is I'm looking for that needle to move. If the needle doesn't move, one of two things has occurred. Either my vise is aligned and I don't need to touch it, or two, I'm past the movement of the indicator and it's no longer indicating. So either I'm not touching the vise or I've used all the travel up in the indicator. Both scenarios give you a result where you don't see the needle move. In this case here, because I barely touched the vise, I'm just moving in very slowly until I touch the vise. Then I go to 1/10,000ths and I move it until I line it up with a number. So I know that I'm not over traveling the indicator. Again, I would hit the x-axis, I'd hit 10,000ths, and I'd move to the opposite side of the vise jaw. And if I read the same number, the vise does not need to be aligned. Now that I've checked my alignment on my vise, I can go ahead and use the Z 10,000ths. Again, we want to move positively, not negatively. We want to move clockwise. So we move clockwise up and away from the vise. I then remove the indicator from the keyless chuck and now I can move the tool holder from the machine. That concludes the demonstration of checking the alignment on a vise.